Good evening, my friends. Tonight, we do not begin with a question. We begin with a recognition. You are not here to discover power. You are here to remember that you have always been standing inside it. Every life is already a manifestation. Every moment is already an expression. Every circumstance you call reality is not something happening to you, but something flowing from you. This is not metaphor. This is not encouragement. This is law. From the very beginning, Scripture spoke plainly to those with ears to hear. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, not by effort, not by struggle, but by renewal, by changing what you accept as true. Reality does not begin in the world. Reality begins in consciousness. And consciousness does not create by force. It creates by assumption. Tonight, we speak of bringing your reality into existence, not by chasing outcomes, not by manipulating circumstances, not by persuading a distant universe, but by aligning with the law that has never failed to obey you. The law that says that which you consistently accept as true must take form. You have never violated this law. You have only obeyed it unconsciously. Every success you've known, every pattern you've repeated, every delay you've endured, every door that opened or closed, all of it followed one thing: the state you live from. And this is where awakening begins, not with guilt, not with regret, but with clarity. If your past was shaped by unconscious states, then your future can be shaped by conscious ones. This is not hope. This is structure. Now listen carefully, because the mind will try to turn this into a method. Resist that impulse. This is not about doing more. It is about standing differently. You do not bring reality into existence by effort. You bring reality into existence by residence. Where do you live inwardly? Do you live in anticipation, in fear of repetition, in expectation of disappointment, in quiet unworthiness? Or do you live in completion? Completion is not an outcome. Completion is a state. It is the inner decision that the question has already been answered. This is why Christ spoke in absolutes. Whatsoever things ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye have received them, and ye shall have them. Locks. Notice the order. Believe you have received, then you shall have. The receiving precedes the having. The inner acceptance precedes the outer appearance. This is not poetry. This is instruction. Most people try to bring reality into existence by staring at circumstances and hoping they will change. But circumstances are effects. They have no creative authority. They only reflect what has already been impressed. To change the reflection, you do not polish the mirror. You change the image being reflected, and the image is not visual. It is felt. Feeling is the creative medium, not emotion, not excitement. But the quiet sense of this is true. The body understands this language perfectly. When you feel safe, your body behaves as one who is safe. When you feel chosen, your posture changes. When you feel complete, your breath slows. And the world responds to your posture long before it responds to your words. This is why affirmation without feeling fails. This is why visualization without acceptance fades. This is why repetition without residence produces exhaustion. You cannot trick consciousness. You can only align with it. So bringing your reality into existence begins with a single sacred movement. You stop living toward what you want and begin living from it. Living from does not mean pretending. It does not mean ignoring challenges. It means interpreting life from a new center. You ask yourself quietly, if this were already resolved, who would I be right now? Not what would I do? Not how would I prove it? Who would I be? Would you be calmer, more patient, less defensive, more grounded? That answer is the state. And once you enter the state, the law begins its work automatically. You do not need to supervise it. You do not need to rush it. You do not need to help it. Law responds to consistency, not urgency. This is why time seems to slow for those who understand it. They are no longer racing toward the future. They are anchored in the present, living from completion. And completion has no anxiety. Anxiety is always a signal of not yet. Fulfillment is the signal of already. So you become attentive, not tense, not hyper-vigilant, but aware. Aware of when you slip back into old inner conversations. Aware of when fear tries to reclaim resonance. Aware of when you begin waiting again. And when you notice it, you do not condemn yourself. You simply return. Return to the state. Return to the feeling of being settled. Return to the knowing that nothing essential is missing. Each return strengthens the impression. Impression creates expression. This is why repetition works, not repetition of words, but repetition of state. You revisit the feeling, not to intensify it, but to normalize it. Normal is power. When something feels normal to you, the subconscious accepts it as fact. And what is accepted as fact must be externalized. This is why the desire must become ordinary inwardly before it can become visible outwardly. Ordinary means no longer special, no longer fragile, no longer rare. It simply belongs. So you stop dramatizing the future. You stop telling stories about delay. You stop measuring progress daily. Measurement belongs to doubt. Faith rests. Be still and know. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is the absence of inner struggle. And inner struggle is what delays manifestation. You were never blocked by circumstances. You were delayed by contradiction. You wanted one thing while living from another. Now there is alignment. And alignment produces momentum without effort. You will notice this in subtle ways first. Your reactions soften. Your expectations change. You stop bracing for disappointment. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. This is evidence. Inner evidence always precedes outer evidence. Then life begins to rearrange itself, not dramatically, not always visibly at first, but intelligently. Conversations shift, timing improves. Resistance dissolves, not because people changed, but because you did. This is why bringing your reality into existence is inseparable from becoming a better person. Wholeness produces kindness. Fulfillment produces generosity. Security produces patience, not as moral effort, but as overflow. You are no longer acting from hunger. You are acting from sufficiency, and sufficiency is magnetic. Now let us speak about doubt one final time. Doubt is not your enemy. Doubt is simply an echo of an old state. You do not defeat echoes by arguing with them. You defeat echoes by no longer standing where they belong. When doubt arises, you do not analyze it. You do not suppress it. You do not negotiate with it. You return. You return to the state of completion. You return to the feeling of being resolved. You return to the knowing that law is already at work. And each return shortens the distance. Distance was never external. It was always internal. This is why manifestation feels paradoxical. You receive when you stop needing. You arrive when you stop chasing. You see when you stop seeking, because seeking affirms absence, and absence is what gets reflected. So you live your life now. You fulfill your responsibilities. You engage with the present. You act when action feels natural, but inwardly you are settled. You are no longer asking life for permission. You are no longer negotiating with the future. You are no longer waiting to feel whole. You are whole. And from wholeness, reality takes shape. Now, as we come into the final stillness, let this understanding sink beneath thought. You do not bring reality into existence by force. You bring it into existence by agreement. Agreement with the end. Agreement with fulfillment. Agreement with the state you choose to live from. You have made that agreement. So let the days unfold without commentary. Let outcomes arrive without being chased. Let life continue translating the inner into the outer. There is nothing left to do inwardly. Nothing left to fix. Nothing left to prove. Remain where you are. This is not waiting. This is rest. This is the Sabbath of consciousness, where effort ends and law completes its work. Be still now and allow life faithful, precise, and obedient to continue revealing what was already brought into existence. The moment you change where you live within, and as this truth continues to breathe within you, the final resistance, the resistance to trusting yourself quietly dissolves. You realize now that you do not need constant guidance, constant reassurance, or constant instruction. You are no longer someone learning how reality works. You are someone who has recognized how reality has always been working. This recognition changes the way you listen inwardly. You stop looking outside yourself for permission to feel settled. You stop waiting for authority to validate your knowing. You stop postponing peace until outcomes arrive. Peace becomes the starting point. And from peace, clarity emerges without effort. You begin to sense direction not as pressure, but as invitation. You feel when to move and when to remain still, not because you are calculating results, but because alignment communicates quietly. You trust these movements because they are no longer mixed with fear. Fear belonged to the old residence. You no longer live there. This trust allows life to meet you halfway, not symbolically, but practically. You notice that timing improves when you stop forcing it. You notice that conversations flow more easily when you stop rehearsing them. You notice that solutions appear when you stop demanding them, not because you surrendered intelligence, but because you surrendered resistance. Resistance was never protection. Resistance was interference. Now interference has ended. And because interference has ended, the law can express itself cleanly. This is why bringing your reality into existence eventually feels less like creation and more like recognition. You begin to recognize the bridge of events forming. You recognize the subtle rearrangements. You recognize the way life seems to meet you where you are internally. You do not cling to these recognitions. You do not build identity around them. You simply allow them to confirm what you already know. Confirmation does not excite you anymore. It reassures you quietly. Excitement belongs to hope. Reassurance belongs to knowing. And knowing is calm. So when days pass and nothing dramatic seems to occur, you do not question the process. You do not feel forgotten. You do not feel delayed. You understand now that stillness is not absence, it is preparation. Preparation is not visible. Alignment is not loud. Reality forms itself quietly. This is why those who understand the law appear patient, even when great change is underway. They are not waiting, they are allowing. Allowing is strength without force. You allow yourself to be human without losing identity. You allow emotions to pass without letting them define you. You allow uncertainty to exist without turning it into fear, because fear requires a story, and you are no longer telling that story. Your story has ended not in failure, but in fulfillment. The story of becoming has given way to the experience of being, and being is enough. From this place, you naturally live more positively, not because you are trying to be positive, but because negativity has lost its fuel. It cannot survive without lack. It cannot grow without resistance. Wholeness starts it, and from wholeness, something beautiful unfolds. You become gentler with others. You listen without impatience. You respond without defensiveness. You forgive without effort, not because you are practicing virtue, but because you are no longer protecting an inner wound. This is how inner transformation becomes outer goodness. This is how spiritual understanding becomes lived character. And this is why bringing your reality into existence is inseparable from awakening. You are not shaping events, you are shaping who you are being while events take shape. And who you are being determines everything. Now, as everything settles into its final stillness, allow yourself to rest here without expectation. There is nothing left to learn in this moment, nothing left to refine, nothing left to add. You have already done the only thing that mattered. You changed where you live within. From this place, reality has no choice but to follow. So remain present. Remain faithful, remain natural, and let life quietly, faithfully, inevitably continue to bring into form what was already brought into existence. The moment you align with truth, be still now. You are exactly where creation begins. And as you remain here, in this quiet place where nothing is missing, the final movement unfolds without effort. You stop waiting for a moment when everything will feel complete. You realize that completeness was never scheduled for the future. It was always available the moment you stopped leaving yourself. This is the deepest awakening. You are no longer trying to bring reality into existence. You see now that reality has been responding all along. Every pause, every opening, every unexpected turn. None of it was random. It was answering the inner posture you were living from. And now that posture is steady. You are not leaning forward into desire. You are not looking backward into regret. You are standing present, grounded, receptive. This standing is power. Not the power to force life, but the power to allow life to organize itself around truth. You understand now why Scripture spoke of the meek inheriting the earth. Meekness was never weakness. It was alignment. It was the absence of inner resistance. It was strength without strain. And strain has left you. You no longer strain to believe. You no longer strain to trust. You no longer strain to become. You are. And because you are, life can finally move freely. You may still act. You may still choose. You may still build and decide and engage. But your actions no longer come from fear of lack. They come from clarity. Clarity does not rush. Clarity does not doubt. Clarity does not second-guess its own existence. Clarity moves when movement is right, and rest when rest is wise. This is why your life begins to feel quieter even as it becomes fuller. You are no longer internally noisy. You are no longer arguing with what is. You are no longer negotiating with yourself. The inner war has ended. And when the inner war ends, reality no longer needs to shout. It whispers. It nudges. It aligns. You notice this alignment in small ways first. A sense of right timing. A conversation that lands exactly as needed. A solution that appears without stress. These are not accidents. They are confirmations. Confirmations that you are no longer blocking what is meant to reach you. And even if there are moments when the old habit of striving tries to return, you recognize it instantly. You do not panic. You do not criticize yourself. You smile inwardly and you return. Return to being. Return to wholeness. Return to the place where the answer already lives. Because you know now, leaving is optional and staying is enough. So let the future unfold without pressure. Let the present be sufficient. Let the past remain where it belongs. You are not defined by what has happened. You are not limited by what has not yet appeared. You are defined by where you live inwardly, and you have chosen well. So remain here in trust, in stillness, in quiet authority. Life does not need instructions anymore. It already has them. They were given the moment you aligned with truth. Be still now, and let everything that belongs to you continue to find you in its own perfect time and its own perfect way. And as you stay with this stillness a little longer, you begin to sense something unmistakable. Nothing in your life is asking you to become someone else. Life is asking you to remain. Remain faithful to what you now know. Remain grounded in what you have felt to be true. Remain loyal to the inner position you've chosen. This loyalty is not rigid. It is gentle. It is alive. You move through the world now with an inner permission you did not have before. Permission to pause. Permission to listen. Permission to let things unfold without rushing to name them or control them. You are no longer afraid of silence. Silence no longer feels like absence. It feels like presence without noise. In this silence, you sense how little effort is actually required to live well. How much of your former exhaustion came from resisting what was already rearranging itself? How often you mistook tension for productivity? Now, productivity feels different. It feels aligned. It feels timely. It feels proportionate. You do what is needed when it is needed without dragging yesterday's fear or tomorrow's pressure into the moment. This is wisdom lived, not learned. You may notice that your inner dialogue has softened. You no longer speak to yourself harshly. You no longer motivate yourself through threat or urgency. You guide yourself the way one guides someone they trust. Trust has replaced force, and trust, when it settles in the body, becomes calm authority. You are not trying to dominate your life anymore. You are cooperating with it. And cooperation allows intelligence to surface in places where effort never could. This is why your decisions now feel cleaner. You say yes without hesitation. You say no without guilt. You walk away without resentment. You stay without fear. Nothing is desperate. Nothing is clinging. Nothing is postponed until someday you are here, and here is sufficient. You understand now that bringing your reality into existence was never about building something from nothing. It was about removing what was blocking what already wanted to emerge. Resistance obscured it. Fear delayed it. Old identities argued with it. But alignment revealed it. And now that alignment has been chosen, it no longer requires maintenance. It sustains itself. You do not need to guard it fiercely. You simply do not abandon it. If an old thought appears, you let it pass. If an old emotion rises, you let it move through. If an old story tries to reclaim you, you recognize it and you stay where you are. Staying is the practice now, not staying rigidly, staying honestly. Honest about what feels true. Honest about what no longer fits. Honest about the fact that you are no longer the one who needs to struggle to deserve what is meant for you. Deserving was never the question. Alignment was, and alignment has been achieved not once, not dramatically, but steadily, quietly, faithfully. So let the world continue to turn. Let events continue to assemble. Let outcomes continue to find their way to you. You do not need to lean toward them. They know where you are. Remain where you are, in the calm center. in the settled knowing, in the place where creation begins without effort. Everything else is already on its way. And as you continue to remain here, something else becomes clear so quietly that it feels more like remembering than learning. Nothing is chasing you anymore. You are not being pursued by unfinished business, unmet destiny, or delayed purpose. Those feelings belong to a time when you believed life was somewhere ahead of you, waiting to be caught. But now, life feels present. You wake without the sense that something is missing from the day before it begins. You move through hours without carrying the pressure to justify your existence through achievement. You no longer feel compelled to extract meaning from every moment, because meaning is already embedded in being. This is the state from which reality organizes itself most faithfully. When the inner world is no longer crowded with urgency, the outer world finds room to arrange itself. You notice that things fall into place not because you planned them perfectly, but because you stopped interfering with their natural order. This is not resignation. This is trust refined by understanding. You trust not because you hope things will work out, but because you have seen again and again that life responds most clearly when you are not divided within yourself. Division created noise. Noise distorted direction. Direction delayed expression. Now there is quiet, and in this quiet you hear yourself more clearly. Not the voice of fear or ambition, but the voice of discernment. The voice that knows when something belongs to you and when it does not. The voice that recognizes alignment instantly, without needing justification. This is inner authority. Inner authority does not command. It recognizes when an opportunity is right, without needing to chase it. It recognizes when a door is closed without needing to force it. It recognizes when waiting is wisdom, not delay. And because you recognize instead of react, you conserve energy. Energy that once went into worry now becomes presence. Energy that once went into proving now becomes creativity. Energy that once went into defense now becomes openness. You feel lighter, not euphoric, not detached, but grounded. Groundedness is what allows reality to take shape without collapse. It gives form, something stable to attach itself to. This is why manifestation, when it comes from this state, lasts. It is not built on adrenaline. It is not sustained by constant vigilance. It is not dependent on mood or circumstance. It is rooted in identity, rooted in acceptance, rooted in the simple fact that you are no longer negotiating with yourself. Negotiation has ended. You are not bargaining with the future. You are not revising the past. You are inhabiting the present fully enough for it to respond. And the present always responds. It responds with clarity. It responds with timing. It responds with opportunities that feel proportionate rather than overwhelming. This is why life begins to feel kinder, not because it changed its nature, but because you changed your position within it. You are no longer standing outside, asking to be let in. You are inside. And from inside, everything looks different. So let this continuation be simple. There is nothing you need to add to this state, nothing you need to improve, nothing you need to defend. You remain attentive, but not tense, open, but not exposed, faithful, but not rigid. And as you continue in this way, day by day, moment by moment, reality will keep doing what it has always done when met with alignment. It will respond quietly, precisely, inevitably. Stay here a little longer. There is no rush. Everything that belongs to you knows exactly where to find you. And as you continue to remain in this quiet certainty, one final layer of understanding settles not as insight, but as peace with how life unfolds. You stop asking life to hurry. You stop asking moments to be different than they are. You stop resisting the pace at which things reveal themselves, because now you recognize something essential. Life is never late. It only appears late to the one who is not yet settled. When you were leaning forward, emotionally, every pause felt like delay. Every silence felt like absence. Every unanswered moment felt like denial. But now, standing where you are, those same pauses feel spacious. Those same silences feel intelligent. Those same unanswered moments feel preparatory. The difference was never time. The difference was where you were standing. This is why impatience no longer pulls at you. It has nothing to attach to. Impatience needs lack to survive, and lack has left the building. You are no longer measuring your life against imagined timelines. You are no longer comparing your unfolding to someone else's surface. You have stopped borrowing urgency from the world. Borrowed urgency is exhausting. Owned alignment is restful. Rest does not slow creation. Rest allows it. And so, you move through your days with an unforced steadiness. You show up where you are meant to be. You speak when words are needed. You remain silent when silence is wiser. You act without overthinking. You wait without anxiety. Waiting has changed its meaning. It is no longer a pause between wanting and having. It is simply the natural rhythm of things aligning. This rhythm is not random. It is exact. You begin to trust the intervals. The spaces between events no longer feel empty. They feel intentional. You sense that something is always adjusting beneath the surface: relationships, timing, perception, opportunity, so that when things arrive, they arrive cleanly. Clean arrival matters. When something arrives before you are aligned, it becomes a burden. When it arrives after alignment, it becomes a blessing. This is why delay was protection more often than punishment. And now that you understand this, even your past looks different. You see how certain things did not come when you wanted them because you were not yet standing where they could meet you properly. You see how frustration shaped discernment, how disappointment refined clarity, how waiting prepared capacity. Nothing was wasted, and nothing is being wasted now. So you stop rehearsing outcomes. You stop preparing speeches for future moments. You stop imagining what you will feel when something happens. You feel complete now. Completion does not dull desire, it purifies it. Desire becomes quieter, more specific, more aligned. You no longer want things to escape discomfort. You want them because they belong to the life you are already living inwardly. Belonging is the key. What belongs to your state will find you. What does not belong will fall away without struggle. This discernment saves you time, energy, and heartache. You no longer chase what looks attractive but feels wrong. You no longer cling to what no longer fits. You trust the internal yes and no without apology. This is maturity of consciousness. And maturity carries a quiet dignity. You do not rush to explain yourself. You do not seek approval for your alignment. You do not argue with those who do not see it. You simply live. Living becomes the proof. And as you continue living this way, reality will continue responding, not all at once, not always dramatically, but faithfully. The right things will appear. The right connections will form. The right timing will present itself, not because you demanded it, but because you were ready for it. Remain here a little longer. There is nothing else to reach for, nothing else to become, nothing else to fix. You are already standing at the point where inner agreement becomes outer form. And from this place, everything unfolds exactly as it should. And now, gently, we let everything come to its natural stillness. Not because the journey has ended, but because the struggle has. There is nothing left to chase, nothing left to prove, nothing left to resolve inwardly. You are no longer standing on the edge of possibility. You are standing within it. Reality is no longer something you are trying to bring closer. It is something you are allowing to meet you at the level you now live from. So let the world move at its own perfect pace. Let timing assemble without pressure. Let form rise quietly to match the truth already settled within you. You do not need to announce this knowing. You do not need to defend it. You do not need to explain it. Live it. Wake each day from this center. Respond to life from this calm authority. Remain faithful to the inner position you have chosen, because what you live from will continue to live around you. This is not waiting. This is not hoping. This is being aligned with law. Be still now. Rest in this completeness, and let life precise, obedient, and endlessly intelligent continue to bring into visible form what was already brought into existence the moment you chose to stand here.